Un bien viejo. My pronunciation is only worse than my
I almost made a lineup Sue without Quickly and without Burks today because I wasn't sure about the Alfred Payton being a game time decision thing. And honestly, that would have been better, even though they're in the exact situation you wanted them to be in. Just classic DFS.
The regret looms large. The highs are not as high as the lows are low, and there's a lot more lows. There's Pistons Mexico. There's so many different Spanish Twitter things. Lo bueno, Rodman Gruder. Stu y Sabian Lee. Lo malo, la defensa. Spurs con una eficia ofensiva de 71.
What is up, guys? It's time for some more NBA games after you couldn't get enough from the early slate, or the main slate, rather, of all these players either thriving or completely letting you down in every possible way. We're here to talk about a few more games, both the 2-game night slate as well as the showdown slate coming up with the Lakers and the Warriors. But I'm Chris Spags, joined by a man who's well-equipped to help me handle 2 different slates at once. He's your old pal, EMac. How are you doing, EMac?
Muy bien, mi amigo. ¿Qué tal?
I think we just stretched to all the extent of your Spanish knowledge. If I had
that was pretty much it. That was, Spanish was in high school. High school was over 30 years ago. It's been a while. Been a minute.
Well, guys, make sure you smash the like button now because we appreciate the support a bunch here, especially as we're trying to find more ways to talk to you guys about the slates that you want to hear about. So if you like this format of us getting the 2-gamer out of the way, doing the showdown, make sure you hit that like button now. Honestly, even if you don't like it, just show us some love because I could use the energy boost after basically was sitting in the bullpen, EMac, for a few hours at the tip-off show, and then now this show's a little bit later. So my arm's feeling a little cold. I didn't get the stretch out that I need, and might only have 1 inning in me tonight.
In this situation, we call that a split shift.
It's fun. And the good news, I had lots of time to think about my lineups that were lovingly crafted with Knicks guards like Emmanuel Quickly and also Alec Burks doing fantastically today. And then Jeremy Grant, my old friend, always popping up and doing nothing for me. So lots of fun out there. Delon Wright getting hurt, just all the joys. And EMac, let's do a quick promo here because we do have the promo code Shamrock going right now, which is one that's going to be good for you guys the next few days. It's to celebrate the NBA second half, but it's also timed with St. Patrick's Day. And we're also heavily promoting March Madness with it. Our March Madness DFS package is a part of it. If you go to awesemo.com/join, use the promo code Shamrock, it'll be half off a week of Awesemo Plus. So you're getting the NBA data, the March Madness data, PGA, NHL, NASCAR, MMA, soccer, esports. These are all sports going on right now. You can get some more skin in the game with, have some better data to build lineups with. So go to awesemo.com/join, use that promo code Shamrock. And of course, make sure to check out OddsShopper, oddshopper.awesemo.com. You can find the win percentage tools on there, the ROI percentage tools, in addition to shopping for the best odds for all the legal bookmakers around you. So go to oddshopper.awesemo.com. As the game's back on here, I'm easily distracted like a goldfish. Go to oddshopper.awesemo.com. You'll be pleasantly surprised at the sheer gravity of data that's on that site now. Lots of different ways to make money on a given day. But EMac, let's talk quickly about the main slate before we dig into this night slate, the 2-gamer, both on DraftKings and FanDuel. EMac, how are you making out on this main slate so far? Anything that you feel good about on a slate in which there is some things to feel good about and a lot of things to feel bad about?
You said quickly. I see what you did there.
Sure did.
So that was a slam dunk play by the one and only Chris Spags. So I'm just looking here. Mistakes were made. It looks like I had 2% Rashawn Holmes. Looks like the field on DK is about 15 to 18%, depending on the tournament. That's a hard one. I thought I was doing well with Giannis. I had 27%. Looks like the field's between 30 and 35%. If I just the smattering of contests I looked at, buy-ins, contest size, et cetera, will change that, but that's just kind of directionally correct. So I thought I was going to have a little bit of a bonus move there when I saw Giannis was put up, like 76.75. That didn't work. I had 15% Alex Len. That should have just been left out of my player pool, but that's okay. So the question is, what am I doing about this? Well, I moved into 40% Julius Randle and 40% Ivica Zubac when we got word that Zubac was going to be starting. So those games are going on right now. Randle is on pace for 50 going against Brooklyn. We'll see where he lands. And then too early to tell with Zubac because he does the old Marcin Gortat, and even when it doesn't matter, his first shift, he can come out of it with 8 points and 6 boards, and he can end the night with 11 points and 7 boards. We'll see what happens with him.
Yeah, I'm on that same boat with you with Zubac. I got to 47%. And as we talk about a lot on the show, adapting the news is going to be one of the most important things you could do for yourself. And even if a play like Zubac, it seems like he's working out really, perfectly fine now, definitely better than Alex Len. So he's got that going for him. But, these are the kinds of plays that you have to swap to and be aware of the moving parts. I know our CEO, Tom, was actually in the NBA breaking news chat on the premium Slack today, just posting, hey, this is important, by the way, that Zubac went from an 18 fantasy point projection to a 28 fantasy point projection. That's a pretty big jump. And that's the kind of play that you do want to swap optimize to, trying to play the most probable outcome out of those. So Zubac hopefully will save some lineups, and it seems like quickly salvaging a little bit down the stretch here too. These plays are never done. Obviously, I know the penchant for a lot of players out there is to tilt so heavy the first quarter, the second quarter. Really, you can't be mad at these guys until the end of the game. Even Alec Burks has previously had bad days or days that look bad, comes in, then hits 5 threes. All of a sudden, everything's forgiven. But right now, I feel like it's just one of those spots to me where I wonder sometimes, EMac, if I should just close my player pool completely out, where I didn't like Keldon Johnson. I have some lineups now where I have my Reggie Bullocks, my Giannis's, my De'Aaron Foxes, all guys who I think did what they were supposed to do. Reggie Bullock doing way more than you could possibly hope him to. And then I have Keldon Johnson there just basically sitting there staring at everybody else, wondering why everybody else is having a good time while he just sits there like a dark cloud on it all. And EMac, I know this is sort of a general question, and we're going to talk more about the late slate, the 2-game slate coming up in a second. But do you have any thoughts on, closing your player pool down a little more? I know it's something that some players are a little bit too excited to do, to cut it down. So 20 guys, I feel like that's a little low, but there are some times where there are guys that are going to be projected for a bit of ownership. Derek White, another guy today I wasn't that bullish on, ended up being under on, thankfully. Our producer Tyler, not so happy with that one, but EMac, do you have any suggestions on that, or any overarching thoughts about trying to avoid some of these guys that you're walking into a landmine, but you feel like I have to get a taste of this guy because he could go off. Everybody else thinks he's great. Because I feel like that's been happening more and more recently in the NBA, and that might just be anecdotal evidence from my disappointing lineups today.
So I think so tonight I actually looked at it. I haven't looked at it in a long time, but I had 97 players in my player pool. I made exactly 100 lineups today. And I didn't know if that was high or low. However, today when I started out at first crunch, let me see, I can tell you where I was because I actually sent it to T McBee laughingly because I had a lot of Knicks, Bucks, and somebody else. But it was the unique, let me get it up, and Lakers. So I had 33% LeBron. I'm down to about 20% now after some late swapping. 25% Jrue Holiday, Schroeder, and Harrell were at 25. They're now at 20 and 15. Kuzma is still at 20. And I had Randall and Burks at 20, Valanciunas at 20, Reggie Bullock at 20. I never have that many. I usually have a few people at 60, some at 50, and then a whole bunch of people around 10. So this was one of the more odder nights, and you could see it because I base everything off when I do my initial start. I upload our player pool with about a half hour, or our player ownership is about a half hour to go. And then I start determining if I want to go higher or lower on them. And I sort it by value. I sort it by raw points. I sort it by ownership. And then I just eyeball it again. So I end up manually adjusting up or down, usually about 60 players on a site or a slate like today, and just sort of see what happens when I start crunching from that point. I also had 3 uniques and 25% randomness. So if I had I only showed the top 20 players or so, but I bet if I scroll down, I got a lot of people that are 1 or 2 or 3%, which meaning they're not in that many lineups. It's just making the player pool look big. But if I'm looking at something like some of the guys you said were busting, I mean, it's like, oh, I've got that guy there. Oh, I've got that guy there. Oh, I've got that guy. I have so many of them. But I feel like last night was a complete disaster. Paul George killed us. Trae Young killed. I mean, there was just a litany of players, and I was more heavy last night. And last night was a weird one because anything you did projected for over 300 points. Tonight, basically anything you did on DK projected the top end for about 270, 275. So it was just a wildly different slate today. So it, to me, felt like this was a more unique one. Things didn't seem as concentrated as they were. I like in some cases when things are more concentrated because it allows you to pivot or leverage against it, which I think is something we really want to do in basketball. It's also a good reminder, as I wrap this up and toss it back to you, that basketball has become rather variant with all the games, foul troubles, crap. We've got 3. I mean, the Spurs have like 6 games in 9 days starting yesterday. Like Pop's not going to rest some of his players or just be like, nah, schedule loss. We're not going to do well on this one. Bench, get out there, right? We've got teams like Houston that are falling apart. They don't have a functional offense depending on who's there. Now, reinforcements may be arriving very soon with Christian Wood coming back, but just teams are falling apart out of nowhere. And then we have other teams that have completely redone their identity, like Charlotte tonight.
Yeah.
This is a game they wouldn't have won previously.
We actually, we were in agreement today, me and Eric Lindquist on the tip-off show, we're in agreement that the Kings were our bad dog for the day. And that looked like a not great pick until the final minute there where Charlotte finally pulled away, got hot. Gordon Hayward really got hot down the stretch, especially. But Charlotte, a team that I expected to take care of business in a meaningful way. They ended up keeping that game close, but going against Sacramento, who gives up so many points to everybody. It's definitely a moving target with the NBA, one to keep an eye on. And certainly some players too. We don't have as much time today to talk about it, but guys like Rui Hachimura, there's one player on today's slate, Kyle Kuzma, some players taking on different roles, which I think are going to be decision points that you have to make, where I did not expect Rui Hachimura to be getting up as many shots as Beal and Westbrook through the first 3 quarters of that game. He ended up, I think, over 15 shot attempts in that one. There's a lot of teams that are going to be making changes down this home stretch where you need to be really in tune with it. Which changes are going to be meaningful, which ones are ones that can be repeatable, and then which ones you want to default to the longer term sample size of guys just not being as involved or being better shooters or worse shooters, whatever the case may be. So some stuff to talk about, which we will talk about more on the show moving forward. But let's get into this slate here, EMac. We got the 2 games. We got Memphis and Phoenix, a 227 combined total here. And I will say one takeaway I've had, which would have been born true in the Charlotte game today, where like if you like Charlotte, I think one move to get away from either lineups that are going to be either chalky or ones that you're going to have too much exposure to is just play the opposing center. And Rashawn Holmes benefited from, he had a good day, in terms of scoring, also got some peripherals as well. But the rebounds for him were really there as Charlotte bricked everything early in that game, got hot down the stretch. But I think for me, this spot for Memphis with what we've seen from Jonas Valanciunas recently, I'm intrigued by the idea because of how much ownership is going to Phoenix. You're going to have over 30% for Booker, over 30% for Chris Paul, over 40% for DeAndre Ayton, and also a 45% number of Mikal Bridges, not to give away the top 5 owned plays, which I don't even know we give these away now because we don't have a halfway point of the show, but smash the like button, guys. We got 300 people in here. Get us to 100 likes, and I'll give you guys the top 5 owned plays in, I guess, 3 minutes. I don't know. So right now, obliterate that like button if you can, and we'll give you guys those for free. But EMac, the approach I'm going to take today is playing Jonas Valanciunas in my handful of late slate lineups, because I think that's the way that you can get away from Phoenix without having to dice it up too much in a way that doesn't make sense for just a handful of lineups. Is that an approach you're willing to go, EMac, with the idea of leaning in on Memphis more, a team that I think Jonas looks under-owned for what he should be compared to his recent performances, getting more secure minutes as well with whatever's changed, just because Gorgie Dang being out of the rotation primarily. But I like Jonas. I like going to John Morant too. He's been disappointing lately and doesn't project fantastically, but I just don't think people will get to that price point. Everybody seems like they're going to be flocking to play Phoenix. So that's how I'm getting different for the slate, EMac. But how do you feel about that? And are you willing to trust Memphis tonight?
Complete agreement. Even on the main slate, I picked Joval as a spot to go to today. While I think DeAndre Ayton is a pretty good defensive center, Jonas Valanciunas is one of the best offensive centers in the game. And when we look at him, a lot of times we overlook that because he doesn't always put up the gaudy numbers as consistently as an Embiid, as a Jokic, even to a certain extent, Vucevic. A lot of that happened back in the Toronto time where they would only play him, 20, 26, 27 minutes per game. That went away when he went to Memphis. He oftentimes goes up to 30, if not a little bit more. I think this is a situation where we could see that, and I like that for him. I just, with his size and his just being bigger than a lot of centers, I think that'll be a little tougher for DeAndre Ayton to deal with. Again,
Yeah,
Ayton's still a good defender, but this is, what do you think? Top 5 offensive centers right up he's like better than Cantor, I believe. Joval is.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of just being able to get rebounds and put him back up, I don't think he's the most skilled big man. You don't really want to see him shooting anything beyond that 5-foot range in that restricted area, I think. But I think the upside's certainly there for him. The minutes have been there for him. And I think, again, if Phoenix underperforms, it's going to be because Booker has a bad day shooting, because Mikal Bridges doesn't contribute a ton peripherally. And honestly, that's really the main thing that jumps out to me, is that Mikal Bridges, I don't think, should be owned by nearly half the slate on DraftKings. That just screams to me an incorrect thing. And I know Bridges is a guy for me that I miss a lot of the good days for Bridges, which I'm fine with, because I don't think the ceiling is that fantastic. And I think a lot of that ceiling has now been priced out of where he is. But EMac, to you, does Mikal Bridges seem worth this much ownership where people are building around him? And I would honestly go cheaper to go to Jay Crowder. I don't mind taking a stab at Saric instead. I really think there's a lot of ways to go besides Bridges.
I would rather go with Saric. I'm never one that really has to be talked into him. Just know that you live or die with him thinking his jump shot, and that doesn't always happen. But he does have the ability to give you a little bit of rebounds, a little bit of other categories besides scoring. But I'd be willing to take the savings and go to Saric. I'm not a fan of either of the Bridges. No relation. Just not the kind of fantasy player I generally look to.
All right. Also, we are now at the quarter-way point of the show, as I apparently confused our producer, Tyler. But we now have 2 halfway points of the show. So I'm just going to flip my stupid money hat, and we're going to give away some ownership. Get us
stupid money. You made me do penny time last time.
See,
but you I delivered. I delivered because I have a collection of pennies.
I said wooden penny time, mocking your old age, because you were from a time in which coins weren't even made of metal. That was the joke. It wasn't that you were 1/100th of my money time. I was offended for you because you misunderstood it. And I actually went to the YouTube channel.
Oh, did you watch that show when I did that? Nice.
Yeah. So I was happy you got your bits in too and showed off your bizarrely large penny collection. But no, my dog is named Penny. I would never say anything disparaging about a penny. Yeah. All right, let's do the top 5 owned plays on DraftKings and FanDuel. And again, guys, smash that like button here. Get as many likes as you can because we need the support. Number 1 on DraftKings, LeBron James, 68%. And of course, you can always get these ownership projections for yourself at awesemo.com/join. Number 2 is the aforementioned Mikal Bridges at 45%. Number 3, Montrezl Harrell at 45%. Number 4, DeAndre Ayton at 42%. And number 5 is Chris Paul at 39%. Let me get the FanDuel ones, and we'll talk more about these numbers. But LeBron is number 1 on FanDuel, 94%, of course. Positionality on there. Tough to imagine there being 2 small forwards who can outscore him on there. Steph Curry is number 2 at 71%. Devin Booker is number 3 at 68%. Chris Paul's number 4 at 58%. And number 5, people chasing a good Andrew Wiggins game, 49% on FanDuel. So again, guys, smash that like button here. And of course, get all this data for yourself at awesemo.com/join. EMac, the ownership here for FanDuel, I feel like is pretty fair for the most part. Andrew Wiggins being the one you can justify moving away from, though I see where people are getting there projection-wise. But on FanDuel, out of LeBron, Steph, Booker, Paul, Wiggins, EMac, is Wiggins the one that you'd want to get away from, given that these guys are all going to be at least 50% owned?
Wiggins and Booker would be the 2 I'd go away from. I really like LeBron. Loved him on the main slate. Like him on the late slate. I like Curry as an alternative pivot. Obviously, in the 2-game slate, everyone's going to be rather popular. That's okay. They did play yesterday. I'm not that worried about it. They had a nice game yesterday against Utah Sunday afternoon where they, I want to say, going off memory, was like 120 something to like 119 or something like that. They ended up winning by 8 or 10 points, if I remember correctly. But that was something to see. Draymond Green really seems engaged now. I think we might get that again tonight. Even, they just knocked off arguably the best team in the West. Now they're going against, one of the other top 3 contenders, maybe make a little bit of noise here. That could see me having him motivated, which is something we don't always see. But looking at his assist numbers the last 10 games, they've been phenomenal.
I agree. I mean, Draymond's really been one of the players where if Golden State's doing well, you're usually finding a pretty good, if not very good Draymond Green day. And going against Utah, I think that's something too, where, against a tough defense like that, you do have to have a shot creator more. And that was why I was okay with Kevin Porter Jr. against Utah the other day, besides the crazy low price. We talked enough about Kevin Porter last week. Hopefully he won't be as important of a fixture on these shows moving forward, but a guy who can create shots against a tough defense is a spot. And really this Lakers defense without without Anthony Davis, without Marc Gasol too. They've taken a downturn. I know our pal Eric Lindquist earlier today was talking to me about he has some concerns about if Alex Caruso's not in, that could be a key part of the Lakers being worse defensively, as a guy who does chase around screens, is the one who does the dirty work in terms of following a guy like Steph. But I think that's all bodes well for Golden State, whether Caruso's in or not. I think this situation for the Lakers is getting, I wouldn't say dire. They're obviously still a leading candidate to win the title based on Vegas's odds. But I think right now the defense is weak. They're clearly offensively something isn't clicking. And Golden State, to me, it's a back-to-back, but they looked like old Golden State against Utah yesterday, and I'm willing to chase that for today.
I wanted to see what Jordan Poole did. He was someone that we saw get a good night a few games ago, and Steve Kerr had been mentioning him in an interview that News God posted for us here.
He's been over 20 minutes and 10 shots, I know, in the last 3 games.
Yeah, so yesterday he played 22 minutes. He was 6 for 11, 3 from 5 from downtown, only 3 assists. That was the only thing he got outside of his 18 points. But it's something to just kind of notice that looks like Wanamaker may have fallen out of the rotation now. It looks like Damian Lee may be out of the rotation as well. It is a back-to-back. Wouldn't be a shock to see those guys come in for a few minutes. But yeah, that's kind of interesting to see. Mannion got 12. Juan Toscano Anderson had 11. Bazemore had 10. Eric Pascal had 20. Now everybody except Kevon Looney, who's starting tonight, by the way, started yesterday, 11 minutes. Yikes. I would not even want him in my player pool at all. Cue his 20 fantasy point game. But for me, coming off these games, it's going to be Curry, Green, Oubre to a lesser extent. I'm never fond of Wiggins. But he's essentially the same player Kelly Oubre is. Oubre just happens to be one of my favorite players, so I default to that. The bench guys, I would have said Juan Toscano Anderson, but I mean, he basically had a donut yesterday. He had 2 assists in 11 minutes and 2 fouls. That was it. Yikes. A little scary there. Can we trust Wiseman to get 23 minutes? Maybe closer to 18 to 20. He's probably not going to go 8 for 11 again. So don't think he's having a major breakout, but he would be the guy I guess we would trust, but he's a little bit more expensive than the other reserves.
Yeah, Wiseman Awesemo has in for 25 minutes today, which kind of surprised me, but did give me a little more Wiseman exposure for the main slate earlier. I didn't quite get there for the night slate just because I wanted to go some different directions at center, including playing the illustrious Damian Jones, based on the fact that, again, Golden State really got strafed on the boards yesterday, which I think could be something that leads to Damian Jones getting more run as long as he can hang defensively. And with Montrezl Harrell out there, I think that Damian Jones might be a better shot to hang in there defensively today. So I like Harrell. I'm going to have him in a lineup or 2, but I think that getting Damian Jones exposure seemed logical to me. I would push back on the Oubre thing, though. I think that Oubre is kind of getting lost in the way that the ball's moving around, where Wiggins' usage has been scattershot with getting Wiseman back in there, with Draymond being so ball dominant. Wiggins still a guy that they're clearly tied to more for the future, or at least the present if they end up trading him. I think that Wiggins, I would favor him over Oubre today, but I think for the most part, if you're getting to that price point, I would probably rather have a lineup with one of Wiggins and one of Oubre, just because, as EMac said, they are similar players. But if you had one choice between one, I think I would favor Wiggins. Are you willing to trust LeBron today, EMac? Because I feel like we have to ask this question now. And it's interesting to me to note that his day last time against Indiana was so bad on Friday. And his first game after the All-Star break, so maybe one that he wasn't the most ready for. Who knows what it is? Has 2 days off that can also spur some things the right direction. But he was just not shooting in that first half. And he ended up getting like decent numbers, I guess, relative to LeBron's floor. But he definitely was a floor day, EMac. And it concerns me that maybe Kuzma's a guy they're trying to heat up on their end with 30% usage in his last 2 games. And one of them was the game before the All-Star break where everybody was out for the Lakers. So that makes sense why Kuzma would get it there. But him coming back last game and playing a lot of minutes and having 30% usage is not something that I would expect of Kuzma. And I wonder, EMac, if that's something that could be repeatable tonight in this spot against Golden State, where, again, not great rebounding for them, I feel like is something that could benefit Kuzma. He's at 13 boards his last 2 games as well. Are you willing to trust the maybe potential mirage of Kuzma tonight, or are you viewing it as just an aberration here in a 2-game sample?
All in, baby. Let's see what happens. 20% on the main slate. I made sure to maintain that. I'm going for the leverage. The Lakers were just too they weren't popular enough when we look at their matchup with Golden State. I'm going to carry that over to the late slate here. I actually wrote up Kuzma in my DFS building blocks article as a good value. Now he's still holding on to the Q tag. So I said that was going to be key. If we need to swap we'll be able to, because we can maneuver between Oubre, Wiggins. They're a little more expensive, but if you have a 2v2, which you probably will on the late slate, you can go to Markieff Morris, etc. I'm not that worried about Kuzma in this one. I'm pretty sure the Lakers play again tomorrow. So if there's any soreness or anything mid-game, wouldn't surprise me if they hold him out. I'm more worried about tomorrow for the heel injury that he has than today. We'll see what happens. But in the two, you mentioned the two games on either side of the All-Star break, he did sit one out. But in the two games he did play, he had a pair of 45 fantasy point performances. He averaged 32 minutes in those two games, 19 field goal attempts. That's huge. 24.5 points, 13 boards, 2 assists, 1 combined block steals. I said, yeah, we've been burned by him many times before, but the longer he sits there with that Q tag, the less people are going to go to that. Let's flip that to our advantage. It still has to perform, but if you get him at a third of the popularity of the other forwards that we mentioned from Golden State, isn't that worthwhile? Roll the dice. One or two of them is going to get 40 fantasy points, but if you had to, for certainty, tell me if it was going to be Draymond, Kuzma, Oubre, or Wiggins, who would you pick? Maybe Draymond, but do you really trust him? No, but there we are. So that has me going to Kuzma.
Yeah, I think we're on the same page. I just think right now is a chance. If you think Kuzma has the ability to kind of take it to another level, and honestly for him, one thing that jumped out to me is the fact that he has been a more willing rebounder, because last year he was just a straight points guy. He's never been a great assist man. He used to be a better defender than he was his rookie year. Now he's sort of for a while there, I think he stagnated, maybe buying his own hype a little bit too much. But if he's going to be able to get shots up at this rate for a steady amount, and I don't have the most confidence he can, but I think if you're going to take that stab, like this is probably the time to take that stab, like EMac is saying, because if Kuzma keeps us up for one more game, he's probably going to be a 7K guy, and then you're going to really be left holding the bag if he has an outright stinker of a day. Right now, no AD, no Marc Gasol, potentially no Alex Caruso too. That opens up a good amount of possessions with those three guys out of there. I just feel like today is a day probably to take the shot at Kuzma. I got him a little bit on the main slate, have him in all of my late slate lineups and all my showdown lineups too, because I just think that there could be something to this with just a need to take some pressure off LeBron. And I think, LeBron does have a bit of that old school Kobe in him, where when LeBron's teammates suck, he has no issue making it clear that his teammates aren't doing their job. And I think that's sort of what we're seeing now, is that somebody's got to step up, and it seemingly has been Kuzma stepping up. So he's not going to project well. Awesemo only has him for 25 fantasy points today, because you got to trust the longer term sample size, but still has him for 26 minutes. And I think if you get the better version of Kuzma today, I think he can easily pay off in that 26 minutes. So that's one of the stabs I'm willing to make today. Got a couple of minutes left here. We got some questions. Like if you have any final questions, I guess, about the Suns and Phoenix game, or excuse me, the Suns and Grizzlies game, drop them in the chat now. We'll try to get them now. We had one question about Caldwell Pope or Desmond Bane was one for the slate here. And I have Bane for 19. I have Caldwell Pope for 17.9. So I'd favor Bane. I don't love Bane by any stretch, EMac, but how would you go with that one? No sight given for Desmond Bane versus Caldwell Pope.
I'd actually go with Caldwell Pope, and I just bumped him up to make sure to get him. Main reason is just the minutes. I don't know for sure what's going to happen with Bane. Without Alex Caruso, that does mean we're short on some ball handlers here for the Lakers. In a pinch, he can bring the ball up. He can facilitate from the wing. I'm not expecting him to be a point guard, but we do have, Kentavious Caldwell Pope's going to be someone else that can be a non-traditional facilitator there. So in the absence of Kuzma, that's the main reason I'm looking at him.
We got a question from Jacob Kimball. What do you think about Melton? Melton is actually a guy that I like as well, because there's not going to be Justice Winslow in there. And it's something that I talk about a good amount on my shows. But one thing I try to prioritize is just, hey, this guy is going to have one less high usage player in his normal rotation shift. And I think that's going to be the case for Melton tonight. So he's another guy that doesn't project fantastically, so I couldn't get him into everything I wanted to tonight. But I made sure to get a little bit of exposure to Melton, because he is one of those guys on a 2-game slate, which is what this is. I think he has tournament breaking upside. So Melton and Kuzma, two guys I think that really just don't project well at all, that I was willing to get to, just because I think there's some narrative reason to go there.
Speaking of narrative, we'll talk about that for the late one. What do I need? We need a narrative for Jay Crowder. He used to play for Memphis, one of the 7 teams he played for.
And he is starting today, and I guess that's worth noting too for anybody who missed it. No Frank Kaminsky starting today, and EMac, I guess that's a question for you too. Kaminsky's minutes obviously get a little more insecure here as this game is about to lock, but Kaminsky, I still don't mind the price point for the main slate. For the late slate, though, I don't think I would go there. But do you feel like there's more opportunity for Kaminsky being in that second unit, being a guy who can rebound, assist, do all that stuff? Like maybe that earns him more time. I think he's the direct pivot to Sarge if you were maybe looking to get away from Sarge in some amount of lineups.
I think it may earn him blowout run, maybe, or mop-up duty if it's there, but it also could cost him one rotation, not, he may only get 3, whereas it may only get 3, whereas if he was starting, he probably would get 3, and there'd be a chance, depending on the mixing and matching going on in the fourth quarter. But they play mix and match so much in the fourth quarter with Phoenix, it's hard to trust anybody outside of their big 3 playing in the fourth quarter. Down to the wire, which we're down to the wire as well.
And this is not going to be out in time. But Fantasy Wiz asking Barton or Bridges for FanDuel.
Barton.
That'd be Barton, but isn't that game already locked? Or is that one just not on? Oh, that's right. It's not on the
it's the 10 it's the 10 o'clock.
Because of the snow delay. That's what I forgot about that. I was like, that question feels like it should have been asked an hour ago. but yeah, apparently not. That game is now locked. Memphis Phoenix now locked. So we can talk a little more showdown in depth. And EMac, here's how deep I'm buying into the Kuzma conspiracy theories that we just espoused a couple of minutes ago. Kuzma's my captain for the showdown tonight on DraftKings because I just think that's the spot that I like the construction the most. I think you can certainly make some arguments that go into a Wiggins would make sense. He's cheaper. He's a guy that allows you to cram in the stars. If you want to fade LeBron again, I think there are some ways to advocate for that on a short slate just to get different. But overall, you're going to still be playing more LeBron than not in the hopes that he just gets back to form after whatever lack of all-star break he had as an older player. But EMac, who would be your showdown captain? I think we have a couple guys that project well that are not going to be the chalk captain like a LeBron will. So who would you want to go to?
You didn't say it correctly. You're supposed to say captain, my captain. It's a new bit that we're doing on this show format.
Already. I'll never do it.
I'm waiting. I know whoever's on with you tomorrow is going to stand on their desk and do this. So it's either going to be Eric or it's going to be Nerd Ask Greg. They will do that.
Oh yeah, you think Greg is going to hop up on a desk? It has to be Eric.
If he thinks it will bring in viewers and or clout on Twitter, yes, Greg will do that.
Just calling him a clout chaser. I like the EMac Greg feud that's budding here on the show.
He said I was a 179-year-old turtle. Damn it.
Yeah, I mean,
revenge. I just move slowly, but revenge.
You both make valid points. I think it's hard to argue. But tell me, who's the captain choice on DraftKings? And well, guys, actually, did we get to 100 likes yet? We didn't get to 100 likes yet. So if you want some free ownership projections for the showdown, you better get that like button number up. Now I'm asking for 125. So now it's your guys' fault. If you got into 100 like I asked earlier, that'd be it. But if you want to get the showdown ownership for DraftKings and FanDuel or single game for FanDuel, make sure to hit that like button now. Get us to 125. But EMac, the captain play du jour on DraftKings is going to be LeBron. I know some people out there, including some of the people who do content for us some behind the scenes stuff. I know one of our guys, Joey, has made a good amount of money recently off of showdowns over the last couple weeks. And one of his strategies right away is to get away from the captain, the highest owned captain in that spot. And obviously today that would be LeBron, 40% ownership on DraftKings. On FanDuel, I think it's a different story there where you can play the MVP a little more freely, but LeBron also the chalk MVP. EMac, would you move away from LeBron captain tonight and just the hopes that you're capturing either some sort of downswing from him or somebody else, does enough for you to have the upside, the raw points you need a captain, but also opens up enough money to afford a lot of the star players you're going to need tonight?
So if you go away from LeBron at captain, does that mean you don't want him in your lineup at all?
I think you'd still put him on utility.
Okay. Because I'm building one with Kuzma because I want to see what it looks like. So I've got Kuzma, Green, Schroeder, Harrell, LeBron, and, Revenge. Guess who the Revenge is on this side? Damian Jones. Damian Jones might play, 9 minutes, 12 minutes? That doesn't feel good. So what if I switch that to, there's no Gasol. If I switch it to Steph Curry, do I get anything better? Oh, I can get Kevon Looney. He's starting. Is Kevon Looney technically better than Jones or not?
Jones, Alex, has playing 19 minutes today, which surprises me. But if that's the projection, 19 minutes for him compared to 13 for Looney, I would lean Jones if that's the run he's going to get.
And that feels like I probably shouldn't play Harrell in that lineup. Maybe I switch over to Wiggins and then I've got more money than God left now, so that makes it easier. So okay, so leaving money on the table, I don't think is going to be a problem here, and I think that is a differentiation play we can do because of the way with some of the key players out on the Lakers side, with Marc Gasol out and Alex Caruso out. Now we're looking at some of the other guys, and like I have a lineup here with Kuzma, Draymond, Schroeder, Wiggins, LeBron, and Jones. And I don't feel bad about it. I'm totally fine with it. Why? Because I have 2,600 left. We just said Jones and Looney are about a tie. Wanamaker hasn't played since the 4th. Damian Lee was a DNP the last game as well. He might have a better chance of being in the rotation. So now I'm down to is Wesley Matthews even see the rotation? He played on the 12th. He played 22 minutes. Let me rephrase this. When do you think the last time Wesley Matthews had double-digit fantasy points was?
The
answer is once in his last 10 games. So okay. Once in the last month. I don't really want to play that. So all of a sudden you're like, hey, I've got 1,600 left on the table. Is anybody going to be mad about that? I'm not. And other people I think may try to spend that. So that feels like a unique way of doing it. The other guy that I do want to point out, now he also has not had that many double-digit fantasy point games. He's had 2 in his last 7. I'm eyeballing it, maybe it's 6. Kent Bazemore. But Bazemore still has a thing for the way the Lakers treated him, even, 7 years removed, 5 years removed? I mean, remember all the times he came through from Atlanta and whenever they play the Lakers, he would just show out. It's just like, it seems like he always does against them. I don't know why. The entire teams have turned over, right? I mean, even if we look at Jones, back with the Warriors 3 seasons ago, how many of those people are still left? Curry, a couple guys aren't playing because they're hurt. Draymond, there's been a ton of turnover across the league, and we forget that a lot. So even if you're playing somebody and there's no fans, and how much of the team is turned over, is it really revenge? Is it really a remember me? No.
Yeah, I wouldn't buy into that narrative too much here. I get first showdown lineup. Honestly, you're probably going to spread around a bunch of the cheap guys, and I never really find any fault with that. With Bazemore probably getting over 12 minutes, so that's his price point. That's enough.
But will he get over 13? That's the question, and he may not. So.
I'd rather have Jordan Poole at this point because I think what's one thing that's not great for Bazemore is he's going to be getting more court time alongside Jordan Poole, and if you are going to get 13 to 15 minutes. Like you need those 13 to 15 minutes to be amazing, even for a showdown slate. And Poole shooting 24% use rate this year. And I think that could be higher, on a given day if things are running good for him. I think Poole to me is going to upset a lot of things here. So Poole, I will say, I think actually, let me just confirm this to make sure, but he made my showdown shell lineup, I believe. And I think that's one thing that you can do right away to get different is going to Poole. Poole's in my showdown lineup that has Kuzma at captain. I want to give away the entire thing so you can all dupe me and ruin my tens of thousands of dollars I'm going to win here. But I do feel like Poole is a cheap play I don't mind going to because somebody's going to shoot the ball a lot, and it doesn't seem like at this point with what Steve Kerr wants, like why would you want Bazemore gunning for whatever he's doing right now when what you have there? Jordan Poole, they clearly want him to do something and to show that he's improving. And I think he's showing it enough to justify that he should be the dominant guy, the dominant scorer in that second unit.
All right, let's build one out with Poole here. So I got Poole, Curry, Draymond, LeBron. Do I gotta go? I see someone in chat mention Taylor Horton Tucker. I think he's perfectly viable. In this one, let's go with him. Let's assume potentially a dinged up Kuzma in this one, and then let's go with Markieff Morris, because if something happens to Kuzma, it's going to be Markieff and or maybe Harold that start to absorb a little bit of that. In addition with Taylor Horton Tucker from there, but there now I've balanced things out, and the Jordan Poole at captain, well, that's going to be probably unique.
Draymond at captain was something that somebody just suggested in chat. And I think, there could be a little bit of a recency bias given that he had the massive outlier day yesterday against Utah. But that said, he does fit the criteria of a guy that I would look for a captain, somebody who can get you 40 fantasy points in this spot and allows you to afford some of the other guys. I'm not sure, EMac, that I don't know what if he's going to allow you to afford all the stars here. You might still have to make some tough choices given that he's 8,400 a normal spot on DraftKings. But let's just say, EMac, out of the guys who could be captain for you, and I think you tend to err on my side of not wanting to go with the super cheap guys because I think that's just burning money more often than not. But I feel like Draymond would probably be my number 2 behind Kuzma, because I think it's going to be hard to afford Steph, and Steph's still going to be owned by about 20% of the field at captain. I'd rather go to one. Well, Wiggins captain doesn't feel the safest, but I don't mind that. But I think for me, it'd be Kuzma number 1, Green number 2, and then Harrell number 3, Wiggins number 4 for captains who aren't the superstars here. Would you be willing to go to those guys heavy, maybe carve out 25% for them each and just completely avoid LeBron and Steph at captain?
Yes. So here's lineup number 3. This is kind of fun. This is with Draymond at captain. Now, again, I'm going with LeBron and Curry in the utility of all of these. But my 3, we'll call them tertiary options: Jordan Poole, Kentavious Caldwell Pope this go around, and Talen Horton. I don't know. I keep calling him Taylor. Talen Horton Tucker. Craziness. There, I'm leaving 600 on the table. There's really nothing else to spend that on. I don't. The only difference I could see is I could change Pope or Tucker into Eric Pascal. I don't really think that is a better play. I can't get to Markieff Morris. I'm 200 short if I were to remove Poole. So I'm okay again, leaving some money on the table here. So there's lineup 3.
Yeah, I mean, leaving money on the table for Showdown, I think that's really, out of all the NBA sports or all the NBA tournament formats, Showdown is definitely the one you feel the most comfortable leaving 1,000 or more on, left behind, and less so for a main slate or even a night slate. Really, I think you're still probably trying to keep main slate. I know there's a significant drop off of finishers under 49.8, I believe, and then for the night slates, I feel like 500 is probably enough of a gap. But yeah, for Showdown, you get a little more creative there. Rank for me the non-star captains, EMac, because I'm just curious where you'd land with this. And I know people really, for the most part, are watching this show or building from the top down with the captain. So if you had to rank your non-LeBron, non-Steph captains, what would the order be?
Kuzma 1, Draymond 2. Didn't build one with Schroeder.
Okay.
I'm going to say his name 5 different ways. But Dennis, let's go Dennis, James, Curry. And I've got 4,500 apiece. What feels good? Nothing really, but we could go with Jordan Poole, Horton Tucker, and we've got 5,000 left. So now we're just 100 shy of Markieff Morris. I think Markieff Morris is an interesting option here. So what if we get rid of LeBron? Okay, that's going to make us really different. Mm-hmm. Now let's put in Draymond. So let's think about this. Draymond, Curry, and Poole. Do we think Poole would play down the stretch if this were a closer game?
I think so. I know that there are people who are saying in the chat. I know our guy Brad Levine is saying that he's in the closing group. He was in the closing group last. Actually, was he versus?
I'm calling it up here.
Yeah, I'm pulling up Popcorn Machine. Popcorn Machine, by the way, one of the sites that a lot of us in the industry use to check the rate data. If you're not familiar with it, make sure you go to.
So he played the whole fourth quarter, and it was relatively close game. Against the Clippers, he played the whole fourth quarter. Against the Suns in a blowout, he also played the whole fourth quarter. Feels like Mr. Kerr is making sure he gets extended run at some point. So basically it looks like he's playing most of the second and all of the fourth.
See, the one concern I would have, and it doesn't look like he was doing anything particularly good before the time you would expect him to come out, where Wiseman and Mannion went out at around the 640 mark. They kept him in past that, but he was missing shots before that. So it wasn't like he was doing anything great to deserve it. The one concern I would have is that if you're getting hurt a lot on the boards, or if there's, a big man thing, I guess, but they didn't bring in Looney, even though Gobert was killing him. So I think you could be right here that Poole just gets that fourth quarter run, and that would definitely make his minutes a little more secure if there's just no way for him to not play the fourth, barring absolute catastrophe.
Because think about who will be in for the Lakers. At the 5, it's either going to be Harrell or probably Markieff, I would guess. If not LeBron and Kuzma as the nominal bigs, and then 3 other players, right? If it's a close game still. So this one, Schroeder works out with Harrell and Morris. Figure those decent chance 2 of those 3 are in the closing group. And then Green, Curry, and Poole. That's a nice one. Let's click save on that one.
Also, the Lakers starters are out, and I just want to make sure. Yeah, so
Kuzma
Kuzma did not start last game either, so not any reason to have any concern necessarily, but Schroeder, Caldwell Pope, LeBron, Morris, and Damian Jones starting for the Lakers. So Kuzma coming off the bench, but I think honestly that's perfectly fine because he's just going to be able to gun as much as he wants in that group.
I can live with that, as long as there's not a James Wiseman punishment thing going on. The Lakers are too shorthanded for those kind of shenanigans.
Yeah, Harrell not starting either. Our boy News God is pointing out too, and obviously Damian Jones starting would indicate that. But Harrell coming off the bench, EMac, the minutes haven't always been the most secure, and Awesemo had him in for 29 minutes today. And I guess there's some reason to have concern, really, for both guys, for both Damian Jones and Montrezl Harrell. And I know it hasn't always been the case. It's sort of an older school viewpoint on Golden State where they're just going to get guys in pick and rolls and just make it to the point where they can't be on the floor. It's not quite to that case now without Clay out there, without that other knockdown shooter. But do you think that there is some world that Harrell gets played off the floor too, and then I guess, are you seeing a world where there has to always be one of Jones and Harrell on the floor? Or do you think there's some way that maybe they go Morris at the 5, Kuzma at the 4, and just go extra small?
I think they could. It's not Draymond's going to be playing a lot of 5, or again, these are all nominal 5. So mix of Draymond, potentially Looney. If Draymond's out there, could see Eric Pascal. We could see Juan Toscano-Anderson, even those guys are kind of more small forward, power forward, but at this point it doesn't matter. There's no Marc Gasol, which means there's no point, how much Wiseman is going to play. He'll get his 22, 24 minutes, but the rest of the time it's going to be just, here's our 5 guys, and it's not going to be the traditional positions.
Yeah.
Do you think of Steph as a shooting guard or a point guard?
He's
Steph.
Point guard. No, he's fundamentally a point guard, but yeah, he's probably more of like a Kyrie style point guard where logically he should have another better assist man setting him up to be a shooting guard. But I guess that's Draymond. Draymond is sort of the point guard and the center for Golden State, which is a confusing situation for the most part. We're at about the halfway point here. 108 likes. We didn't quite get to where we wanted to. 125 was the goal to get this. But, Tyler, I don't need you to pile on. Having enough of a day of mediocrity, though. Alec Burks did catch Roddy McGruder, so we've got that going for us fantasy-wise. But here are the top 4 owned plays for the showdown. And if we get to 125 likes, I'll give you guys the bonus number 5. But on DraftKings, number 1's LeBron, number 2 is Steph Curry, number 3, chalky Damian Jones. Maybe some cause for concern there. If you are going to play him, he's going to be widely owned as a 1K play in the DraftKings showdown. And number 4, Montrezl Harrell. So people may be playing. Would you play Jones and Harrell together, EMac, or would you want to segment them apart, given the fact that they are now 2 of the top 4 owned plays?
If I didn't have to play Jones, I wouldn't. I don't mind if they're together.
Yeah, I think you're playing him really because of the price point and that there's nobody else at 1K besides Wesley Matthews who even has a chance to really do anything.
Yep.
Yeah, I don't love playing them together. If you wanted to segment them apart for a showdown, I wouldn't hate it because I think that based on the ownership, I assume there's going to be people playing both. But the price for Jones is so low that if you think he's going to be remotely competent, then I guess you could probably play him alongside Harrell. For FanDuel, the top 4 owned plays, LeBron, number 1 at 99.9%. So shame on that 0.1%, or glory to that 0.1% not playing him on FanDuel. Different rules over there, though, so you're probably going to be playing him in every lineup. Steph Curry, number 2, 95%. Number 3, Montrezl Harrell, 59%. And number 4, Dennis Schroeder at 41%. This grouping feels pretty fair. The one thing I would say, it does look like Draymond looks really low owned on FanDuel. And I know, honestly, you'd think maybe he'd have more of a boost because of the steal upside and I guess theoretical blocks, even though it's not really his game anymore. But 27% ownership for Draymond on FanDuel EMac, that feels pretty low to me. And Kuzma too, also a complete non-factor, 20% ownership expected for him.
So we don't get the double bonus over there, and turnovers do hurt. At Kuzma, what is Kuzma? He doesn't get a lot of steals and assists, but I still think those guys are fundamentally amongst the top 7 plays tonight. And I think that's a lot of times on Showdown how we need to rank them is what's going to happen, and maybe not be basketball purists if there is such a thing.
Yeah, I think that's a reasonable way to view a showdown. It's really just about these guys' ability to, nailing the captain is really the most important part for showdown, I think, by a decent margin. Like, you want your lineup construction to make sense. You normally don't want guys who are going to have overlapping roles. Alec Burks is actually quietly having a nice game now, which is insane. This is, if you've ever wondered about DFS and you see, us do these shows and you wonder how we feel throughout the process, just as baffled as any of you are, where Alec Burks did nothing for 3/4 of basketball, and now he's apparently going to be the linchpin to the Knicks even staying in this game against Brooklyn down the stretch. So classic basketball. Let's see. Kuzma coming off the bench. Chris Johnson asks, yes, he's coming off the bench. Is going to be Markieff Morris starting and Damian Jones starting there. Will Steph have a lot of assists is a question that is being asked in the YouTube chat by Sean Drake. I presume he's asking for an assist prop, or maybe asking because of your point guard question. I have him in for 6 assists today, so I wouldn't say a lot. I would have Draymond having a higher assist number.
Let's see what we have over here at oddshopper.awesemo.com, the sister site to awesemo.com. For assists, we have Steph Curry coming in on our odd shopper with 5.5 across the board at all of the sites. You can actually get, if you want it the over, you want to go to, we can't say the names on air because YouTube doesn't like that, but there's one site that is 10 points less on their vigorish than the others. You're paying heavy tax on the under, and we are saying there's a 3.2% ROI on the under, the 61% chance of winning. That's not very much, which means this is a very good line.
Yep. So, I like the over for that number for Steph, but I don't, his assist upside has been killed basically by having Draymond Green be that point guard. And that's basically made him into the Kyrie in that offense, and a guy who's going to shoot more than he's going to create for others. But it's still possible. There's still some good defense left in the Lakers, even though it hasn't looked like it recently. So maybe that results in Steph being covered well, setting up more guys. You never know. But
do we have time for quick trivia?
Yeah, go for it.
What do these players have in common? NBA players. AC Law, that might attract the attention of our producer. Kobe Carl, Corey Maggette, Mickey Moore, Anthony Morrow, Anthony Tolliver, Ronnie Turioff, Raja Bell. Here's the money shot, Spags. Andres Bedrians, Monta Ellis. That's the Golden State Warriors, Steph Curry's rookie season.
Wow. There you go.
There's some blasts.
They were all Warriors. I didn't know that it was from a specific year. That makes sense. Wait, so whose first year was that?
Steph.
Oh, Steph. Oh, really? I didn't know. Wow. That feels like that's much further in the past than
2009, 2010. That was a while ago. Because a lot of these guys, that was Turioff in his 4th year. CJ Watson is on that team in his 2nd year. AC Law, 2nd year. Kobe Carl, his 1st year. What did he play, like 2 or 3 years? Coach Carl's son. Fellow rookie was Chris Hunter. He didn't make it very far. Captain Jack was in his 9th season. Devin George in his 10th, and Corey Maggette was in his 10th. Oh, and Mickey Moore. I didn't say him. He was in the 11th year.
Yeah, that's definitely not a great Warriors team. Not the. I do remember thinking that Bedrians is going to be good because he was in that time frame where we had seen so many good Eastern European big men coming in around, and then I feel like he and Nicholas Skidishvili were the ones that were like appreciably so much worse than everybody else. Bargnani at least had moments. I think he just got ruined by circumstance than anything. But I don't know. That's not a great group for Steph. Better team he has now, I would say.
Yeah, 26-56, coached by Don Nelson.
This upfront fanatic saying that was back before Steph could grow facial hair. I feel like that's still going on right now for the most part. You can grow some on there. So
they had the fastest pace in the league that year with 100 possessions per game.
Yeah.
Basketball has changed quite a bit.
Any final thoughts on this one for sneaky plays? I know we've talked about Damian Jones, who is now officially very not sneaky as one of the top owned plays on DraftKings. But does anybody strike you? And Kuzma too at captain, I feel like that's sneaky if you are willing to just ignore a player's entire career and focus on the last 2 games. So that's what I'm choosing to do today. But is there anybody, EMac, that you feel like fits the criteria? I know you've mentioned Markieff Morris. I feel like he maybe qualifies for this. But is there anybody else here? A Talen Horton-Tucker,
Tucker comes to mind for me. And Markieff, I think, would be the other. I mean, with Markieff, you're always playing with fire. And this is as a Washington Wizards fan, is he going to feel engaged and feel like playing tonight? He might, because he is starting and he should actually get more minutes. So I think we're okay to consider him on this. If we look at, Kelly Oubre is 2.4%. Just throwing that out there. Draymond's still only 4%. So it's pretty heavy. I did not realize, and my read's a little bit longer, or my refresh is a little longer back than yours, but 11% Montrezl Harrell is the number 3 guy. So everything's on LeBron. I mean, that's huge at 40%. And in what is he in the regular slot? He's 60%. So basically, LeBron's going to be on 98% of all lineups.
Yeah, I know there are people earlier in the chat who were saying like they never want to play LeBron on a night slate or on whatever slate because he's just phoning in every night. And I think it's
Aren't
hard
all
to
the
say
games
that.
night slates for LeBron.
I mean, for the night slate, I could see getting away from him more than the showdown. It's just hard for me to imagine there being enough scores who are going to get to LeBron's floor outcome, and you still have value. I guess the way to not play LeBron for me would be you're not playing LeBron and you're not playing Damian Jones. I think is the way to make sure that you're sort of getting that right, is that you're not taking a cheap guy and expecting somebody to outscore LeBron. You're going to an entirely different lineup construction there. So like that would be on DraftKings 13-6 if you were playing LeBron and Damian Jones. So I think instead you go to, Oubre and Markieff Morris, maybe. That's a duo, EMac, I feel like you don't hate. So maybe that's the way to do it. But I think if you're not playing LeBron, and it does seem like that's still not the best move, but if you really want to not play him, I think you just got to take 2 mid-tier guys and hope that the sum there outscores the single part of LeBron being competent, and Damian Jones too, to a lesser extent.
So as far as phoning it in, LeBron in his last 12 games is averaging 1.58 DraftKings points per outing. That's pretty good.
Yeah. Chris,
some would say that's elite.
People wanting Chris Paul. Oh, there we go. I guess quickly back in for everybody out there who's been dying for Emmanuel Quickly. It took Frank Ntilikina fouling out to get Quickly back in. So that's fucking Frank, man. I hate that guy so much. He's taken so many possessions away from Alec Burks for no reason. He's missing layups, missing threes. He's just one of those guys that classic Tibbs thing to do, just to play him because he's slightly better defensively, even though he has absolutely nothing offensively.
You think Eric Lindquist is now sitting on his couch in the dark doing one of these, my precious, as Quickly is back in the game?
I think we all should be. I was very heavy Quickly, and FanDuel too. I thought he looked like an even better play where he's just too cheap. He and LeVert made it very tough to not have a chalky shooting guard position on FanDuel. Those guys, I don't know what FanDuel's doing. I honestly, I've been so loyal to DraftKings over the years, but I'm really tempted just to move all my money over to FanDuel and just start playing there heavy every day, because you have the cheaper tournaments, you have the positionality. Like FanDuel's growing in appeal to me now that their tracking isn't down every single day. Their stat tracking as it was for a stretch earlier in the year.
Their stat. What do you mean? Their stat?
When they were basically not able to keep scores for they weren't able to follow live for 3 days out of 5.
Yeah. They had, I forgot about that. Boy, that seems like a lifetime ago, doesn't it?
Yeah, I got to say FanDuel's starting to speak to me a little more. I could see why so many of our guys have started to play more heavily, and I'm a brand loyalist, but I think FanDuel's going to get some more of my money in the coming weeks.
I think that's fair. And that's a good point, Chris. We should, if you're cold on one side or one type of format, dial back your buy-in. If it's not changing, maybe try for a couple of days a different format, a different sport, a different site, just to clear your head, and then come back and things will start. Maybe you'll see things in a different light. I don't mind saying that. And then you're not like taking days off. You're still doing the mental exercises, but then you come back to your more traditional puzzle or the one you default to, and things may appear differently or clearer for you. So.
Yeah, and I know, historically the thought process has always been, and I think for showdowns, I think DraftKings still has a more appealing format overall where you are paying that tax to get the 1.5x. But for regular main slates or even night slates, I think their tournaments tend to be a little smaller in terms of the upside for the top prizes. But I just like I like that sort of binary a little bit more, because I think for me especially, like I'm getting to a point of, I think a lot of people out there probably the same thing, where you end up overthinking things or underthinking certain plays and overthinking significant others, and the end result on DraftKings, you have that position flexibility. It does end up being a little bit weird. So I don't know, just something I'm considering here. So if you hear me talk more FanDuel, you'll know that DraftKings has lost some of my money, at least, if not all of it.
Yeah. Well, and then the other thing to think about too is we're after the All-Star break. Traditionally, we lose a lot of people. Like you can go look at the 50-50s in the cash games and see that it's just the regulars now on DK. There's not even the partial badge people that were there even up until the All-Star break. So that's something that's a reminder for us. Plus, it'll be interesting to see what happens when when MLB has their first games on April 1st, because we literally have 6 weeks of regular season overlap between NHL, MLB, and NBA. I don't know where they're going to size the contests. I don't know. We're figuring out what we're going to do for content. We'll do tons of shows. Do not worry about that. But we're trying to strategize with all of this. And for someone like me who plays all three sports, I don't think I can play all three sports simultaneously like that.
I know I'll be jumping between, EMac will too, jumping between MLB and NBA, and that alone can be, you're talking about LeBron swinging strike rate and in the usage rate for Trevor Bauer, getting things all conflated, but it's
Steph Curry against the shift. Yeah. We could be in trouble here.
Honestly, that's basically how the defenses work against them. Any final thoughts, EMac, before we call it quits here? We got 1 minute left to the showdown. I basically gave you guys my lineup, but Kuzma at captain, taking the Damian Jones chalk. I think that was my approach, but any final thoughts on what you came up with, or really anything you want to say here before we end it?
No, I think we're good. We're running this all back again tomorrow, starting with technically tonight, we got the Slate Starter podcast with Rin Pack and Eric Lindquist. They'll be recording that. And then you get early risers, you get Josh. All that stuff's going to come out on the Awesemo Podcast Network. Usually I listen to whichever one I have at the time when I'm out walking the dog in the morning. So there's always something, to hear about the upcoming slate. That's just kind of gets me going. And if it's really early, it's not Josh's show because it hasn't been turned into a podcast yet. If it's closer to lunch, it'll be that, or maybe it'll be the strategy show. But don't forget the Awesemo Podcast Network.
Yeah, check it out. And apparently Joe Val almost had a double-double in the first quarter. So there's one good take for you guys that we got right from the jump. But we appreciate all you guys watching. As EMac mentioned, start early tomorrow. Watch the process video, which is 6:30 East Coast time. And then if you hang in for the entire day, you'll end up seeing about, 15 hours of content, or 15 man hours here, even though we're not doing content for every minute of those days. So watch all the stuff tomorrow. Subscribe to the notification bell. Take advantage of that promo code Shamrock while it's still there. Half off of a week of Awesemo Plus for all the data, including our March Madness package, which is going to be a lot of fun, a lot of great projections from Matt Kajeski and some of our other guys contributing there. So check that out. I'll be back tomorrow, I believe, with Greg Ehrenberg for this show. And of course, we have tons of content. So just subscribe to the notification bell. Watch everything that we're doing here. We'll see you guys again soon. Enjoy your nights. Good luck.